According to the Press Freedom Index, joining me in studio is the Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Dr. Pea Mushelenga, to discuss this. Good evening, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yes, good evening.
Doctor, please take us through some of the factors that have contributed to Namibia maintaining its #1 position, or rather reclaiming it, apart from that which we know, which is out of the Constitution.
Yes, apart from the Constitution, the legislation that we passed last year, Access to Information Act, it is one of the contributing factors, obviously, because it is a piece of legislation that is now creating a framework of how public information is to be disseminated without being withheld. Secondly, as you know, government does not regulate the media in Namibia. Media is self-regulated. They have their own media ombudsman and so forth. So we do not try to interfere with the media. None of the branches of the government, be it executive, legislature, or judiciary, try to interfere with the work of the media.
Now, the first factor that you provided, Minister, is the Access to Information Act, which was passed. Now, taking that into consideration, how do we see this act then elevating Namibia on a global platform? Now, as we saw in our news story, Namibia is currently ranked 22nd globally as in terms of press freedom. When fully implemented in terms of this act, how then will it propel Namibia on a global scale?
Well, it will be an enabling piece of legislation that really allows investigative journalism to be carried in a manner that there are no limits. It creates accountability on the part of public office bearers and all those that are entrusted to manage public affairs to be accountable to the general public by providing information as required.
As you might have seen in the insert that played earlier where, the President was making reference to some of the complaints from journalists, if I am just to add some others, which are journalists complaining or media personnel complaining that sometimes government officers take too long to respond to queries, or there is just a really tedious bureaucratic process. From your side, Minister, as a government spokesperson, how would you then, or what would you then say is a reasonable waiting period? Because, journalists are working on deadlines as well.
Yes, I know in most cases journalists work on the deadline of 24 hours. Now, depending on what the topic is, I believe that the office bearers should be able to provide information as required, at least within that time frame that they are given. But as I said, it depends on which information. If you are asking the minister who is out of town and he needs to check records in his office, you may have to wait for some times until the minister is provided with information from the office. Or, as I always tell journalists to say, when you ask a minister on a Tuesday morning, when the minister is in cabinet, from cabinet straight to parliament, you may not expect an answer because ministers may not even have time to go through the messages on their phones on a Tuesday.
In conclusion, Minister, as we wrap up our conversation, is there anything that one can do better to improve, press freedom, to just ensure that Namibia retains its #1 spot in the continent, perhaps take it also globally, not just from, government side, but also from the media side? What is your perspective on that?
Yes, as they say that it takes two to tango, we all need to ensure that we maintain this position. Media, by continuing to report accurately, timely, because if you also do not report accurately, it forces other people on the other side to be skeptical whenever you are trying to ask them because they know you will not be reporting accurately. But again, for public office bearers or public officials, they should know that they are having an important responsibility to keep the public informed on what is going on in the public sphere.
Minister, we appreciate you so much for making time to speak to us this evening.
It's my pleasure.